Hello, I'm Tony Mangino from TC2, and this is Staying Connected, the podcast where we talk about what really matters to enterprise buyers navigating today's technology and sourcing decisions. Today, we're talking about a problem that can create a lot of frustration inside large IT organizations, and that's invoices that don't seem to match the contract. Now, it sounds simple. The customer negotiates a deal, supplier sends an invoice, and the invoice should reflect the agreement. But in enterprise technology environments, that connection can break down quickly. Contracts are complex, inventories change, services are added, disconnected, moved, or upgraded. Pricing schedules get amended. Supplier billing systems use codes and structures that don't always map cleanly to the deal the customer negotiated. Now, the result is familiar: recurring disputes, unresolved credits, internal spreadsheets, long email chains, and a growing lack of confidence in the baseline. Now, today I'm joined by my colleagues, Teresa Knudsen and Jamie Hansen. Teresa heads up our IT cost management practice here at TC2, and Jamie recently joined us after 25 years of pricing and compliance experience at Verizon. Jamie, let's start with you. When an enterprise customer says, this invoice doesn't match our contract, where should they start?
They should start by slowing the problem down and turning it into a fact based review. A lot of organizations want to jump straight into disputing individual charges, and that may be necessary, but it can also create a perpetual fire drill. The best first step is to establish facts: what services are actually being used and where, what the customer is entitled to under the contract, and what the supplier is billing. When you do your fact based review, keep in mind to gather complete details such as account and circuit ID, service address, build rates, contractual rates with contract reference documents, and details of when errors began. If those things do not line up, you need to find out why before you can fix the problem.
And that's important because invoice problems are rarely just accounting issues.
That's true. Exactly. They're commercial, operational, and contractual issues. For sourcing teams, invoice errors can mean the negotiated value is not being realized. And for IT teams, that really can indicate that the inventory and service records are not accurate. So that's troubling. And for finance, these issues can undermine the confidence in numbers. And from legal and vendor management, they raise questions about rights and remedies, supplier accountability. So when problems arise, they cover a lot of different groups. And for the broader enterprise, the impact can be material. If recurring billing issues are not resolved in a timely manner, the company may actually overpay for months and years. And keep in mind that companies typically have a set time frame for which they can dispute charges. Sometimes it's as short as 3 months, others can be 12 to 24 months. Typically, most companies fall in that 6 to 12-month period of time. So if you fail to dispute a charge on a timely basis, your recovery period is actually limited by that contractual language. And this really has some financial ramifications. For example, if you have a billing error that goes back 15 months and your contract has a 6-month audit dispute limitation period, you'll only get credit for 6 of those 15 months.
So the invoice becomes more than an invoice. It becomes the record the business is using to budget, plan, negotiate, and ultimately make decisions.
That's right. If the baseline is wrong, the decisions built on that baseline are at risk.
So let's talk about the first step and what it takes to do that fact based review.
It means understanding the full contract, including the master agreement. So it's amendments, pricing schedules, service orders, product attachments, any credits, discounts, waived charges, minimum commitments, recovery periods, and any service specific terms. A lot of enterprises have years of amendments and ordering activity. I've personally seen contracts with amendments in the triple digits. So the correct answer may not be in one document. It may be spread across multiple exhibits, schedules, and change records. So before challenging the invoice, the customer needs to know what the supplier was supposed to bill.
And then you need to compare that to what is actually being used.
Exactly, Tony. The second step is service inventory validation. And a lot of enterprises are challenged by this one just due to the nature of the business. The customer needs to know what services are active, where they're located, the business owner, whether the services are still needed, and which contract terms apply. So if a circuit was disconnected but it's still billing, that's one kind of problem. If a service is active but billed under the wrong rate plan, that's another. And if a site closed and charges continue to bill, that's yet another kind of problem.
Sometimes supplier invoices are vague on all of these details, and quite possibly to their advantage. So if you don't know the details, you won't challenge them. Getting to these details may require some digging and coordination with your account teams. I'm fairly certain everyone has seen an invoice that just says monthly charges with no details. So the inventory definitely gives context to the invoice.
So, what I'm hearing is you can't validate billing in isolation.
Correct. Billing has to be validated against both the contract and the environment. If you only look at the invoice, you may miss whether the charge is needed. And if you only look at the contract, you may miss whether the service actually exists or should have been disconnected.
Teresa, what are some common patterns that you see in your work?
There's actually several that show up repeatedly. Rates that don't match a pricing schedule, discounts that were negotiated but not applied, services billed after disconnect dates. Sometimes duplicate charges are created by ordering activity. Sometimes charges are assigned to locations that are unclear, closed, or misclassified. Sometimes there's credits that are promised that were never applied or granted. There's fees and surcharges that are treated maybe inconsistently within the agreement. And so getting these details right is very complicated. And all of this can be impacted by the assessment of taxes and regulatory fees, which can compound any billing issue. The key is really to identify patterns, not just isolated errors. If one invoice line item is wrong, for example, there might be dozens or hundreds of similar items with the same root cause. So focus your reviews by supplier. Review all services by supplier that are the same, and you'll know whether there are patterns that need to be resolved.
And this is where many customers get stuck. They identify a problem, open a dispute, and there can be delays in getting corrections and credits.
Yeah, this happens all the time. I mean, suppliers take months to resolve issues. And so you have to be diligent on your follow-up and you have to escalate when things fail to progress. Diligence, diligence, diligence is key here. And the goal really is remediation or correction of the problem. That means you need to fix the root cause. It may require a rate table correction or amendment, a billing system update by the supplier, might need some inventory cleanup on your side. There might be some disconnection information that needs to be confirmed. There may need to be improvements in your ordering controls. It comes down to escalating within the supplier's billing and commercial teams to resolve issues. And the customer should be asking not just, do we get our money back, but did we really fix the root cause that delivered this problem?
And Teresa, the supplier conversation really changes when the customer has that evidence.
Yeah, the suppliers often default to say, our system is correct, right? So you need to move beyond that. The customer needs a clear chain of evidence. This is where keeping email trails is really critical. And here's the governing term, the service record. There has to be an invoice charge. You have to see if there's a variance between what's billed and what's in the contract. You have to show the account teams what the financial impact and what corrective action is required. And in many times, you actually have to show the supplier their contract that has the supporting rates, discounts, credits. It really seems ironic, but that's really a necessary step. And this turns a billing dispute into a defensible remediation effort.
Jamie, if a listener is dealing with recurring invoice disputes, what questions should they ask first?
It's a bit of a list, but all important first questions to ask. And while I'm numbering them, they aren't in any particular order. So, one, do we know which contract terms apply to the charges in question? Do we have a reliable inventory of the services being billed? Can we tie each charge to a site, service, owner, and contract vehicle? Are we seeing isolated errors or a reoccurring pattern? Have credits been issued without root cause correction? Are invoices being reviewed against the contract or just against prior month spend? And lastly, do we have enough evidence to support a supplier level remediation plan? Those questions will help the customer move from frustration to structure.
And a different question, but what should they avoid?
Well, they should avoid chasing every invoice line without prioritizing materiality. Definitely avoid accepting a one time credit if the underlying billing condition remains. Also, avoid assuming the supplier's billing system reflects the contract. And an important one, avoid entering renewal without resolving major baseline issues. If the invoice does not match the contract today, that gap can weaken the next negotiation.
So, Jamie, what does good look like, assuming the customer gets this under control?
Well, good looks like an inventory the enterprise can trust. The inventory has complete details to know what was purchased, where it is, who owns it, what it should cost, and which agreement governs it. Goods also having invoice exceptions that are tracked at closure, recurring errors that are corrected at the source, goods having credit and recoveries that are documented, disconnects that are confirmed, and contract terms that are connected to invoice review. Also, just as important, governance becomes repeatable and the customer is not rebuilding the same spreadsheet every month. There should be a process, ownership, and a cadence for keeping billing aligned with the contract and the environment.
And that's really key as it creates value beyond just the billing.
Absolutely. It improves cost management, renewal readiness, supplier accountability, and internal confidence in the data. When the enterprise has clean facts, it can negotiate more effectively, the budget can be created more accurately, and better sourcing decisions are ultimately made.
The key takeaway here is that invoice disputes should not become a permanent operating model. If the invoice doesn't match the contract, the starting point is not just another dispute ticket. It's a structured review of contracts, billing, and service inventory. Teresa, any final thoughts before we wrap today?
I think organizations that handle this well do not treat billing issues as random noise. They look for patterns, they quantify the impact, they build evidence, and push for root cause remediation. It could be as simple as account teams aren't giving signed contracts to the execution team within that company. So that may be a root cause item. And this is really how you move from recurring disputes to spend integrity. And be ready to escalate when corrections are not made in a timely fashion. Happens all of the time, so be ready for that one.
I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you, Teresa and Jamie, for joining me today. And to our listeners, if you'd like to discuss billing integrity, contract compliance, service inventory validation, or fact based remediation with your suppliers, or if you'd like to discuss other technology strategy, sourcing, and cost reduction needs with Teresa, Jamie, me, or any of our TC2 and LB3 colleagues, please give us a call or shoot us an email. You can also stay current by subscribing to Staying Connected, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.